Next, I want to introduce the concept of drift in a random walk process. And we can do this by setting the probability parameter p to something other than zero point 0.5. So for a positive drift, we'll set p greater than 0.5. For a negative drift, p is set to something less than 0.5. So for example, in our particle motion process, I'm going to look at values of p in the range 0.55 to 0.95. And we'll look at the first 20 time steps in each of those processes. And when we do that, we see that for lower values of p, the drift in the process is not at all evident. But as p increases from 0.55 to 0.65, 0.75, and so on, the terminal value tends to become larger, more positive, and the drift in the process more evident. We can do the same in reverse, of course, by setting p in the range from 0.45 down to 0.05. And there we see in reverse that as p becomes smaller, the negative trend in the process becomes more obvious and the terminal values tend to become larger and more negative. Now I want to look at an example of a random walk process with a very moderate drift by setting p equal to 0.51. And let's look at some examples of sample paths from that particle motion process with that parameter. When we do that, we find that in many instances, the process moves in the negative direction over the first 20 time steps. It may move up. It may oscillate around the x-axis. It's very hard to discern the drift in the process. But if we look at a longer horizon, for example, say 1,000 time steps, then the upward drift in the process tends to become a little clearer. We can do even better by looking at an even greater number of time steps. In this case, I'm looking at 10,000. And if we also sample multiple paths from the process, here I'm choosing 100 sample paths. And when we do that, we tend to see something like the chart shown below. Now, quite a few of the paths end up with a negative terminal value, but the overwhelming majority have a positive terminal value and a very clear upward drift. And this is evidenced by the histogram on the right-hand side of the chart, showing the terminal value.